In some of our earlier movies, we've seen how to set off a render after the File Out node has been correctly set up. In this movie, we're going to take a much closer look at that Render Parameters window to understand more of its features and functions and how they control the render. To do that, we're going to load the same script we used in the last movie. So we'll go to Load, the pop-up, go to Exercise Files, select Chapter 7, go to ShakeScript02 and load that in, because it has all these terrific File Out nodes to play with. The first thing to do when you want to set off a render is select the node that you want to render out. Then you go up to the Render pop-up menu and select File Out nodes, and that opens the Render Parameters window. The first thing you want to set is the Render File Outs option. If you select All, it's going to render all of the File Out nodes in your script. The default Selected means that it's only going to render those nodes that you have selected. The good news is, even with this window open, the Shake GUI is still responsive, so you can change your mind on which nodes you want to select. If you make a mistake and forget to select the nodes first, when you hit the Render button, Shake prints this warning message. All you have to do is click OK, and then select the nodes you want, and resubmit the render. However, what we're going to do now is close the Render Parameters window, open up the Globals tab so you can see some important numbers, and we're going to reopen the Render Parameters window. But this time, we'll use the Node View right mouse menu pop-up feature. Go to the Render option and let go on Render File Out nodes, and that opens up exactly the same Render Parameters window. Now let's do a quick review of the time range, which controls the frame range of the render. As we can see over here in the Globals tab, the shot is a 50-frame shot. So this time range we have set now would render the entire shot on ones. But if we wanted to render it on twos, we would then type 1-50x2, return. That means render the full shot on twos. If we wanted to render a short selected frame range, we might say render 25-35, and that way we would render only frame 25 to 35. If you want to render a single individual frame, just type the frame number in here, and now we're going to render frame 25 only. If you want to enter several individual frames, just enter their frame numbers separated by commas, like 1, 25, and then 50. Return. The Auto button over here will fill the time range automatically, but the number that it puts in is not the frame range that's in the Globals tab. It's the longest clip in the script. This clip is 100 frames long, and that's what the Auto button enters into your time range. If you want to copy in the time range from the Globals tab, you can come up here to Update from Globals and click on Update Now. It has copied in the time range from the Globals tab as well as several other settings from the Global tab. Another one of the settings it copied in is the motion blur. I'm going to reset motion blur back to 1. In the Globals tab, the motion blur is 0.5. So if I update now, it's going to copy the 0.5 again from the Globals tab. The reason you have this ability to enter separate numbers in the Render Parameters window is so that you can set up a render that is different than the global settings. We'll return to these motion blur settings in another movie after we've learned more about how motion blur works in Shake. We'll do a quick review of Use Proxy. This is to select a base res render. P1 is a half-res proxy render, and P2 would be a quarter-res render. If you select P1, the half-res proxy render, then the output files are going to be half-resolution, regardless of whether you have half-res proxies for the file in nodes. The quality parameter is set between high and low, and all it really does is turn the anti-aliasing on and off. With quality set low, the anti-aliasing is off, your renders will look a little jaggy, but you should pick up some rendering speed. Max thread is really how many CPUs you are applying to the render. If you wanted to do a render in the background and still have some CPU power to run the GUI, you might set max thread to 1. Then only one processor is running the render, and the others are used for your GUI. The sequential button tells the renderer that you want to render the file out nodes sequentially rather than all at the same time. Sometimes this will result in a faster render, and other times it will not. It just depends on the topology or the layout of your node tree. In this movie, we took a closer look at the Render Parameters window and learned more of its features and functions. We also did a quick review of both the time range features for selecting frame ranges to render, as well as the use proxy features to set what proxy we want to render at.